the point of this webinar, or the purpose of this webinar, is just to go over really quickly what the new scope of work is and what the reporting requirements, as I'm aware of them currently, are. I know that in talking to a few people that there's been some confusion about what everybody's supposed to be tracking, and so I wanted to just use this time to go over that briefly and answer whatever questions come up. As with other webinars, if you have a question, go ahead and type it into the questions box on the panel, the GoToMeeting panel. You can just go ahead and type it in, and I'll read them, and we can go over them. Or if you want to just raise your hand, go ahead and do that, and I can unmute your line. There aren't that many of us today. So whichever way works best for you will work great for me. And with that, and I should mention also that I am recording the webinar. So if you don't want your voice recorded or whatever, go ahead and type your question in, and we'll do it that way. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As you are likely aware, the scope of work changed this year. So in previous years, we have been tracking like the materials that were distributed, or the the number of follow-ups you did, or applications assisted, or pre-screens, or whatnot. Now the state has really narrowed it down in terms of what sort of data they want. They want to know applications, how many applications were submitted, how many applications were approved, the number of SAR-7 submitted, research submitted, and then data on special populations. Now I have, where'd it go? Sorry. Hang on one sec, because I have let's take a look at the scope of work real quick. So this is the scope of work template that you all filled out when you were doing your scopes of work. So as you'll notice, it's apps submitted, apps approved, forms or SAR-7 submitted, and research submitted. And then there's a little description area for what you do on your outreach, and then also the target populations. So if this does not look familiar to you, send me an email and I will send you your scope of work so you have it. Because this is really what we're going off of this year. So now, if we go back to the slides, so these are the things that, like I said, they're looking at. And I thought we could just go ahead and take them one by one. And if you have questions, like I said, go ahead and type them into the little chat box, or go ahead and raise your hand as well. So with applications submitted, you actually have to submit the application for the client. So if you are assisting the client in filling it out, but they want to walk it over to the to the county office or whatever, you can't count that application. You can only count the ones that you physically submit. That could be, like you drop them off at the office, or you are there with the client and you're doing the application with them and you submit it right there with them. But it has to be actually submitted to the county. And then the next one is applications approved. And this one is quite a bit different than what we have been doing in the past. So it applies to both paper and online applications. You have to get your data from the county or the consortium. So you can't rely on calling your clients and asking them what the outcomes of their applications were. You actually have to get it from the county. So you could get it from, if you're doing online applications, you can get it from the CBO portal. If you're doing paper apps and the county tracks them for you, you can get your data that way. It's really up to you and your county how you get this data. Now, I know that there are some issues with this, both with the validity of the data in the CBO portal, and then a lot of folks just don't have counties who are able to give them data. And so if you're having trouble, let me know and we'll try to work together on it. There are a lot of counties that are, or a lot of CBOs that are having some challenges with this, and it's really important that we know what those challenges are so that we can work to address them. Just I wanted to do a quick reminder on release of information and let you, remind you all that it's always optional for the client. You should try to get one if you can, because that will allow you to get data, your outcome data from your client's applications if you have some sort of an agreement with your county. But please don't sign up to be authorized representatives, because although being an authorized rep will let you get access to whether your client's applications were approved, it also gives you the authorization to use their benefits or do their interview for them, or actually act on their case. And we don't want that to happen with outreach. It's actually one of the few things that, per the federal guidance, we cannot do. So just keep that in mind. If you need some samples of release of information forms, I've got a few. I'd be happy to share them. So going back to the portal data, we know that a lot of it is not very good. So the numbers don't necessarily match up with what your lists show in terms of how many applications were submitted or approved or pending or whatnot. So there's currently a little pilot going on to help see how valid the data are and try to make them more valid. If you are interested in participating in that, let me know. It's probably, if you're already tracking your client data, it's probably not more than what you're already doing. And the state is spearheading that. So like I said, if you have questions about that, or if you're interested, let me know, and I can give you more info. And then the last bit on this is that the state's expectation for us is that we meet 75% of the stated goal. So if on your scope of work you said that you were going to have, I don't know, like 1,000 approved applications, the state wants to see at least 750 approved applications for the year. And this year they've attached a fiscal penalty to it. So if we don't, as a contract, if we don't meet 75%, then they are saying they're going to hold 10% of our reimbursement. I don't have much more information on it other than that, but if you have questions or concerns, do let me know. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pause and see if there are any questions. So like I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the little question box, or raise your hand and I can unmute your line. Okay, so it doesn't seem like there are any questions at the moment. If you have them, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but definitely, we'll come back to them. Okay, so the next little bit is just on STAR 7s and recertifications. Oh, I'm sorry, hang on one sec, there's the question. The question is, will the approval rate be 75%? And I'm not sure that I understand what that question means. So if the person who typed that in could elaborate, we'll come back to it after this slide. So this slide on STAR 7s and recertifications submitted is similar to applications submitted, where you must submit them on behalf of the client. And if you help the client with their STAR 7 or their recert, but they decide to turn it in on their own, you can't count that. Additionally, if you're training people to do STAR 7s and recertifications, which is fantastic, you can't count those either unless you are actually turning in the application. Okay, so I've got a couple other questions here. Hang on a sec. Let me go to those. So one question is we get aggregate data from our county, but almost 2 months later, should we be working with our county to get the data sooner? If you can, yes. If you can't, then we will go with what you have. I mean, if your county's already giving you data, I think that's fantastic. If it takes 2 months, that's a little bit challenging, but in the beginning, the state seems to understand that in the beginning it's going to be a little harder for us to actually have data because it'll take a while for folks to work this out with their counties. So if you can get it sooner, that would be great. But if it's just not gonna happen, then we'll go with what you can get and work it out with try to work that out with the state. Okay, there's another question. Does the 75% only apply to the approval rate or all of the scope of work? It only applies to the approval rate. It doesn't apply to applications submitted or SARS, 7s, and research submitted, only applications approved. And then there's just a clarifying question on what the 75% is. That means that it's not that 75% of the applications you submit have to be approved. It's that if we look at your scope of work, the number of applications you said would be approved, which is this box right here, has to be, so you have to meet at least 75% of that number. Not 70, you have to have a 75% approval rate. Let's see, there's also a question that says, for those of us that are working with assisters on applications submitted and approved, would we include their numbers as well? If that is the model you're using, that's fine. All right, it doesn't look like we've got any more questions at the moment, and it doesn't look like any hands are raised. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep going. Okay, so the next little bit is on special populations. So the state this year decided that they are interested in seeing how much work we're doing with these six populations that they designated. So those populations are seniors, people who are working, immigrants, Latinos, mixed immigration status households, and veterans and military families. Seniors, of course, are 60 and older. Working households are households with earned income. Immigrants, they have defined as non-citizens with legal status to be in the U.S. So the examples are LPRs or asylees or refugees. Latinos should be pretty self-explanatory. Mixed immigration status households, so that's somebody or a household with people who are eligible for CalFresh and are maybe a non-citizen or a citizen. So that could be, you know, like an LPR or citizen children, and as well as ineligible non-citizens. So those would be people who are not authorized to be here. And then the last group is military families and veterans, and that should be pretty self-explanatory. So in terms of tracking these folks, the state said you don't have to ask the applicant. So you don't have to ask them, are you Latino, are you working, are you a veteran? You don't have to ask. You can just make that decision from what you already know. And you can mark more than one box. So in some cases, people, it may be a household that is mixed status and has an immigrant in it, and is a military family or whatever. So this right here that I'm showing is the application assistance log that I sent out with the link to the binder contents this year. You don't have to use this log. I just wanted you to have a template in case you needed one. So it's tracking all of the application, or I'm sorry, the special populations, applications submitted, and then there's a spot for whether they were approved. So I know that most of you have your own tracking forms, so just be sure to modify what you're using currently so that you can track all of this information. And then, let's see, and if you have questions, go ahead and either raise your hand or type in your question. There's a question that I go slower, or a comment that requests I go slower. My apologies, I will try to go slower. Okay, so let's go back and okay, we'll go back to the slides. Hang on one sec. Okay, so again, for special populations, you do not have to ask the applicant, and you can mark more than one box. Let's see. So for reporting, I haven't seen any of the reports that the state will be asking us to fill out, but based on what I already know, they are going to be asking for us to report on the number of applications submitted, the number of applications approved, source 7 submitted, recertification submitted, special populations, a description of activities. So that might be where you say something like, I don't know, you went to like 3 health fairs, or if you're still tracking pre-screens, it could be how many pre-screens you did, or if you're tracking materials still, it could be how many materials you gave out. I think it's just a description of what you've been doing for your outreach. And then I think they're also going to be asking for successes, promising practices, and challenges, and perhaps some sort of a narrative around those, but again, I'm not really sure. And as soon as I get more information, I'll let you know. We will have a new reporting form this year. Without knowing what the state report form looks like, I can't tell you what ours will look like, but we are reporting quarterly, and so I will send out a link in probably late December. Send out a link in late December, and there will also be a PDF so you can see what the form looks like. And I think that's it. That is it. So do you have other questions? I can send out the tracking log to folks if you haven't already seen it. There's a question on, for special populations, will we report on households or individuals? I believe it's on households. I don't have any information that tells me otherwise, but I believe it's households. So it's not, for example, it's not how many seniors are in a household. It's just, does this senior or does this household have a senior in it? Sure. Then there's a question about the difference between SAR 7 and a recertification. So the SAR 7 form happens or is due about 6 months after the client is initially approved for CalFresh. And it happens, it's called a semi-annual report. They are, just as an FYI, they are revamping it. It will be shorter in the near future, but for the meantime, it remains the same. And it just asks whether there have been any changes in household composition or income and things like that. The recertifications, I believe, it's kind of like reapplying for the program, and that happens annually at the year point for folks who are on benefits. Let's see. Are there any other questions? Okay, there's a question that says, in negotiating with the county on approval rates, when should we ask for approval rates after the month? The 1st, the 5th, when do you need it after the quarter? So in terms of when you can get your data from the county, I think that, I mean, if you have the choice to get it, I think, as soon as you can get it would be great. If you could get it monthly, that would be fantastic. But I think it'll just depend on what you're able to negotiate with your county. If your county's able to get it to you 5 days after the end of the month, that would be amazing. But if they can't, we'll work with that and just really let the state know what our challenges are. I feel like the state really needs to hear from us and hear from you as to what your challenges are related to this, because although we've been tasked with getting approval rates, the counties haven't necessarily been tasked with providing them to us. So, you know, any sort of feedback or stories or whatever that you can share would be great. Let's see. I have a couple other questions. Hang on. I can send out the slides. That's not a problem. I can send out the slides, and then I'll also send out a link because we'll post this webinar recording. Let's see. There's another one that says, the change that the county has to provide the data is huge. I totally agree. It'll take some time to set up these arrangements if possible at all. What do we do in the meantime? Also, much of our activities have been PR and setting up clinics and pre-screening or screening. None of this is billable, so I don't know if we will be able to reach our goals. Let's talk about this one off the webinar. It is a big change, and I'm happy to help you have these conversations with your county if you want help. It is a big change, and so as much as I can help you, I am willing to. Just feel free to reach out to me. Are there other questions? Let's see. So to clarify, we will now have to take the application STAR 7s and research to the county or complete them online on behalf of the clients. Yes, that is true. So that they changed the scope of work. The state changed the scope of work from assisted to submitted, and so now we are charged with submitting the applications on behalf of the clients. Hang on, somebody asked for my contact info, so hang on a sec. Let me put that in. So this is my contact info. You are more than welcome to call or email anytime, and I'll be happy to chat with you and work with you on this. Darn it. Sorry. Lost my webinar screen. Okay. Are there any other questions? Oh, here's another question about expedited. What about expedited applications we assist with? Our county wants us to recommend to the client to walk in the application themselves. So I asked the same question, and it seems like the state said if you come across somebody who looks like they'll be eligible for expedited, and you have them walk into the county, you can't count that application as one that's submitted. Are there other questions? Double check to make sure nobody has their hand raised. Nope. All right, so it doesn't look like there are any other questions. Like I said, I'll go ahead and on our end, we'll go ahead and post this, and I'll send out a link, and also send out the slides in case you want them. And if you have any questions on any of this, feel free to email or call. And if you are having challenges or just want to share what's happening in terms of tracking this with tracking your application approvals or outcomes with your county, let me know. I would, of course, love to hear how it's going, and am absolutely willing to help however I can. And with that, I wish you all a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.